Hello, dear and beloved ones. Please subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. Brew some tea or coffee and enjoy watching.
Dima Seliverstov tried to calm his beloved girlfriend, Lika, who was nervous about meeting his mother. He said, "Don't worry, she won't bite. She's strict, of course, but she's actually fine. Everything will be fine." Lika replied, "I'm not sad, just nervous. After all, she's your mom, and I need to prepare for the meeting. It's not just a casual meeting, it has to be taken seriously." Dima smiled and continued, "Oh, stop overthinking it. It'll be fine. I'll call my mom and tell her we're coming on Saturday. I'll pick you up, but tell me what your mom likes because it's improper to show up empty-handed." Lika smiled back, and Dima hugged her. Then he began talking about his mom, her interests and preferences. Anzhelika, strict but fair, came to the city from the village. She studied at the economic faculty, and while studying, she lived in a dorm. To cope with financial difficulties, Lika started working. First as a promoter, then cleaning floors in stores, and later she became a waitress at a café. Although the pay was very modest, she didn't give up because there was no one to help her. Soon, she made an agreement with the management so her shifts wouldn't end too late since the dorm closed at 11 p.m. Lika was a diligent and responsible worker, and the management didn't interfere with her. Lika was born into a family full of love and harmony. Her parents, Antonina Stanislavovna and Viktor Sergeyevich, loved their only daughter very much. They lived in a village where her mother worked as a teacher and her father worked as a driver. But everything changed when Antonina fell seriously ill. Lika was still little, and her parents hid the details from her. But over time she noticed how her mother became weaker. Antonina could no longer work and struggled to manage household chores. The doctors shrugged. The illness was discovered too late, and the family had no means for treatment in Moscow. Despite this, Antonina insisted on spending her last days at home, close to her family. Viktor, though willing to take out a loan, agreed to her wish. When Lika was 9 years old, her mother passed away. The whole village came to say their final goodbyes to Tanya, and the neighbors quietly helped. Some cleaned, some cooked, while Viktor continued to work. Viktor wanted to take Lika out of school so she wouldn't be alone, but the teacher advised against it, suggesting that she stay in school to keep herself distracted from thoughts of her mother. Lika asked her father not to take her home, and they both tried to learn to live a new life, in a world where there was no longer a mother. But this loss brought Viktor and Lika closer together, and they learned to understand each other better than before. They quickly divided the household chores. Lika learned to cook fairly quickly, thanks to the help of their neighbor, Baba Klava, who always came to help and showed the girl how to do things. Their life gradually improved. Lika studied well, and together with her father, they tended to the garden. Viktor was still young, and women couldn't help but notice him. However, he never brought other women into their home. But when Lika turned 14, Viktor finally introduced her to Valentina. Valentina Dmitrievna entered the house confidently, as if she had lived there for years. Lika was surprised as the woman was pregnant and, by the looks of it, was about to give birth soon. "Hello, Anzhelika," the woman said, sitting down at the table. "Hello," Lika replied, casting a surprised look at her father. Viktor sighed and spoke to his daughter. "Lika, you can see for yourself. I respected your mother's memory for a long time, but living alone is not a life. I didn't bring other women into the house to spare your feelings, but many years have passed. You're not a child anymore, and you understand everything. I met Valia, we got married, and now she is my wife. She is the new mistress of our house. I would really like for you two to become friends." Lika noticed how Valentina looked at her with a superior and condescending gaze. The woman smiled and said, "Oh, Vitya, of course we'll be friends." Lika felt very uncomfortable. "Dad, why didn't you tell me earlier? You're going to have a baby," Lika said quietly. "What difference would it have made?" Valentina responded bluntly. "Lika, don't be a grouch. Now we're one family," Viktor said. Lika felt deeply hurt and upset. She couldn't convince herself that everything was normal. She wouldn't have judged her father if he had started a relationship, but bringing a woman into their home, especially one who was pregnant, was something she couldn't accept. It turned out that Valentina was also a widow and had a son, Lika, who was 19 at the time. He studied at a technical school and lived in the city. Soon, Valentina gave birth to a daughter named Veronica. At first, everything was calm, but later Lika realized that it was better than what followed. Exhausted from the baby and household chores, Valia became irritable and took out all her anger on Lika. Victor spent more time at work because now a lot of money was needed. Valia began to reproach Lika for not cooking, not cleaning, focusing only on her studies, and not letting her eat. Lika tried to stay at school as long as possible, doing her homework in the reading room and eating in the school cafeteria. She never complained to her homeroom teacher, but in the village everything was visible, and the teachers helped her in any way they could. Valia, however, started complaining to Victor about his older daughter. Not only is there no help from her, but now she's out somewhere. I wait for her from school, and she's never there. Where is she? With whom? She doesn't say anything. Oh, Vitya, with a character like that, she'll bring trouble to the family, Valia would say to him. Victor, tired from work and influenced by his new wife, began speaking to his daughter in a raised voice. Lika didn't want to complain about her stepmother. She could see that her father believed Valia, but she couldn't stay silent. Dad, I'm not out running around, she said loudly. When I need to study, I can't prepare in this kind of atmosphere. Exams are coming up. Lika, don't exaggerate, her father replied. Dad, really, I'm trying to avoid running into Valia, but she keeps coming to me, Lika said, then added, I also wanted to talk to you. About what? Her father asked. About school. In our school, there are only 2 classes and I decided I want to finish 11A, but to do that, I'll need to move to a school in the city. You understand, I can't take the documents, Lika explained. At that moment, Valentina entered the room. She had been standing behind the door, eavesdropping on the father and daughter's conversation. Now she decided to intervene. What are these news? What school in the city? Why do you need that? Don't you want to help around the house? Or are you just good for consuming? She complained. Valia, what's wrong? Victor was surprised. What's bad about her wanting to study? She has good grades and she could get into university. I want her to get an education. Oh, sure, studying. She's going to study in the city, this little flirt. She should go to trade school, work, and do something around the house. Who's going to marry her, especially a girl like that? Valentina continued to complain. I'm not planning to get married. I want to study. Lika replied through gritted teeth. Study? Or just go to the city and flirt? Valentina said mockingly. Dad, let's talk later, Lika said quietly and went to her room. Victor sighed heavily and Valentina kept grumbling behind the girl. Victor felt guilty towards Lika. He hadn't expected things to turn out this way with Valia. He hadn't planned to bring her into the house, but it was already too late. Valentina, too, was struggling. She wasn't young anymore, and taking care of a small child was difficult. Lika irritated her. That evening, as they lay in bed, Valentina started talking about Victor's daughter again. Val, please stop, Victor interrupted her. Stop? I'm just saying the truth. Let her go to trade school, work. How long will she live off us? She wants to go to university, Valia grumbled. She's my daughter, and it's my responsibility to take care of her. Lika does well in school and she can get into university, Victor replied. And you still have Veronica, Valia said with a hint of bitterness. But she doesn't need anything yet. What does she need for now? Victor countered. And I have a son. But you don't care about him, Valia continued. He's an adult, he works, and he's studying. I've never refused to help him, Victor said. Valentina didn't know how to respond. She was very hurt that Victor defended his daughter so much. Lika had a private conversation with her father later, and Victor supported her decision to continue her education. They agreed that after the 9th grade, Lika would move to the city school. Victor would take her there in the morning and pick her up in the evening. The school had a library, and that's where Lika planned to study. Although Valia was unhappy about it, her opinion didn't matter anymore. Lika went to the 10th grade and Veronica grew older. Valia decided that since Victor's older daughter wasn't home during the day, Veronica could take her room. Lika was moved to the dining room. Victor worked a lot and Lika didn't want to live in the dorm. They often communicated by phone, but Lika rarely came home. She didn't want to see Valentina. Valia felt like the full-fledged mistress of the house and started inviting her son over more often. Victor had a neutral attitude toward him until the son started drinking. Victor didn't drink and disapproved of this habit in others. Valia tried to smooth over the conflicts, but Victor firmly said that there would be no alcohol in his house. One day, while Valentina was going through documents, she realized that the house they lived in was only partially registered. Victor hadn't finished it in his life, and after Antonina's death, he had completely forgotten about it. Valentina thought for a moment and, that evening, talked to her husband. "I was tidying up and found out that the house isn't fully registered. Let's take care of that," she said. "Yes, it's needed, but when there's no time," Victor thought for a moment. "I'll help you. We're a family. Let me take care of it and you just need to sign where needed," Valentina continued. Victor shrugged and agreed. Valentina began the paperwork and soon the house was officially recognized as joint property of the couple. Valia was pleased with herself as Lika hadn't participated in this process. Anzhelika quickly found a part-time job since her father couldn't send her much money. The first few months were tough, but Lika soon adjusted and she even grew to like this lifestyle. She got along well with her classmates and she had a warm relationship with her dormitory neighbor who was also a girl from the countryside. One day, Lika called her father to check on him. He replied that everything was fine and not to worry. However, in reality, Victor had been suffering from chest pains for several days. Valentina treated him with herbs and medication, but his condition didn't improve. Victor had planned to go to the hospital himself, but he didn't make it. He had a heart attack that took the life of this relatively young man. Anzhelika was shocked by the news. She regretted not coming earlier and not being able to say goodbye to her father. The funeral passed by like a blur, and Lika remembered little, but she was certain of one thing: she no longer had a home. Valia became the rightful owner, and soon her son arrived to stay with her, giving Lika uncomfortable looks that made her uneasy. On the second day after the funeral, Anzhelika hurried to leave, taking only a few things as mementos of her father. Valia was pleased with herself, having filed for inheritance, claiming she didn't know the whereabouts of Victor's eldest daughter. Alexei, having quit his job and studies in the city, moved in with his mother. Anzhelika was left all alone. During this difficult time, she received enormous support from Anya, her dorm roommate, who wouldn't let Lika fall into despair and even invited her to visit during the holidays. The girls became true friends. In her fourth year, Lika quit her job as a waitress and started working as an assistant accountant at a construction company, marking the beginning of her career. Slowly, she recovered from her grief and realized that she had to rely solely on herself now. At work, the management noticed her potential and hired her full-time. Time passed and the day of her diploma defense was approaching. Lika felt confident and passed the defense with flying colors. The commission praised her excellent work and wished her success in her career. Her classmates decided to celebrate the diploma defense and went to a café. Anya and Lika joined them and the group had fun reminiscing about their student days. At a nearby table, a group of young people were celebrating a friend's birthday. There was a small dance area in the café, and when the music started, a young man from that group approached Anzhelika and invited her to dance. Lika was shy but accepted the invitation. During the dance, they introduced themselves. His name was Dmitri and he was celebrating his birthday. That evening, they danced together 3 more times, and at the end of the night, Dmitri offered to walk Lika home. Anya and Lika were still living in the dormitory, but they were already planning to move out. Anya had also found a job in the city, and the girls decided to rent an apartment together, cheaper and easier that way. That evening, Anya took a taxi, and Lika walked with Dmitri on foot, enjoying the beautiful summer evening. At the dormitory doors, they exchanged phone numbers, and after Lika returned to her room, she took a shower and waited for her friend. "You have nothing to lose," said Anzhelika. Anya agreed with her friend and went on the date. Then came the second, the third. Over time, Artyom revealed a completely different side of himself. He turned out to be intelligent, well-mannered, and able to hold a conversation on various topics. Anya felt like a princess when she was with him. 6 months into their relationship, Dmitri invited Lika to his home for a romantic dinner. Anzhelika understood what this meant, thought it over for a few days, and eventually agreed. She only told Anya about her decision on the day of the meeting so that her friend wouldn't worry when she didn't come home that night. Dmitri had prepared everything carefully. He cleaned his apartment, put fresh sheets on the bed, ordered dinner from a restaurant, and bought a good bottle of wine. Anzhelika was nervous. She trusted Dima, but she couldn't shake off the anxiety completely. That evening, she carefully chose her outfit and applied light makeup. Dmitri arrived at the agreed time to pick Lika up. She said goodbye to Anya and left. It was her first time visiting his place. Dmitri's apartment was small but cozy. It was clear that a woman's touch was missing, but for this evening he had done an excellent job preparing. When the restaurant order arrived, they sat down for dinner, talking casually. Dima opened the wine and their conversation grew more intimate. Then he turned on some music and invited Lika to dance. Their slow dance ended with a passionate kiss. Lika felt a little scared, but she didn't want to back down. Dmitry gently lifted her in his arms and carried her to the bed. He knew she had never been with a man before, so he was careful and unhurried. Lika simply trusted him. The next morning, Dmitry lovingly prepared a light breakfast for both of them. They chatted about small, insignificant things until Dima suddenly fell silent. Looking at Lika intently, he finally said, "You know, I want you to meet my mom." "Your mom?" Anzhelika repeated in surprise. "Yes. You're my girlfriend and I want to introduce you to her," he confirmed. Lika blushed and smiled shyly. It was a sweet moment. Meeting his mother meant that he had serious intentions. After breakfast, they went for a short walk and later, Dmitry drove Lika home. Anya had been eagerly waiting for her return. Still lost in the haze of happiness, Lika briefly shared what had happened. "See? I told you. You'll be married in no time," Anya teased when Lika told her that Dmitry planned to introduce her to his mother. "Oh, Anya, I would be so happy," Lika replied dreamily. "And what about you? Have you seen Artyom? You know, he keeps surprising me. Back in university, he was so quiet and withdrawn. But now he has completely opened up to me. He's interesting, ambitious, and has big plans for the future. At work, his bosses value him. We haven't made any serious plans together yet, but I feel so comfortable with him," Anya shared. "I'm so happy for you, Anya," Lika said warmly, hugging her friend. Meanwhile, at Dmitry's job, big changes were on the horizon. Rumors had been circulating in the office for a while, but nothing had materialized until now. The company's founder, Vsevolod Semyonovich Sadov, was deeply passionate about his business. He had built it from scratch and reached significant heights. For years, he had dreamed of expanding and opening a branch in the capital, but something had always held him back. He didn't want to enter Moscow as just another contractor, he wanted a solid foothold. Finally, he called a company-wide meeting. Dmitry was more anxious than most. He had been expecting a promotion to department head soon, but now everything was uncertain. To make matters more complicated, the current department head had been planning to leave for months, either to relocate or simply resign. Many had noticed growing tension between him and Sadov. They had never been close friends, but there had been a mutual respect. Lately, however, they could hardly find common ground. They didn't openly argue, but the friction between them was evident to everyone, even new employees. Now, the entire office was filled with a sense of unease. No one knew who Sadov would appoint in his place or what would happen next. So far, no official announcements had been made to regular employees. Meanwhile, Dmitry began to seriously think about his personal life. He loved his mother very much, but after moving to the city, he gradually distanced himself from her and sometimes even felt embarrassed about her simple rural background. Despite this, he deeply respected her and understood how hard it was for her to raise him alone. Nadezhda did her best. She worked, kept a household, grew vegetables, and on weekends, early in the morning, she went to the city to sell eggs from her chickens. Her husband left her when Dmitry was 2 years old. He said he was tired of everything, that life had become too difficult and that raising a child was too much for him. He filed for divorce, moved to the city, got a job, and for the first 6 months he even paid child support, small amounts, but for Nadezhda, it was still some help. However, he refused to visit his son and eventually stopped paying alimony. After 6 months, he disappeared entirely. Nadezhda didn't know where he was or what had happened to him. She had no time to dwell on it, she had to focus on raising her son. Dmitry finished school in his native village, then went to a technical school and later attended university part-time, all while working. From the time he was in technical school, he knew he wouldn't return to the village. He enjoyed city life, and his mother supported him in this. At first, Dmitry visited her every weekend, but over time his visits became less frequent. Nadezhda understood that her son was grown up and had his own life, but every time they spoke, she would bring up the topic of grandchildren. Of course, Dmitry had relationships, but none of the women he dated seemed like a potential wife or the mother of his children. That all changed when he met Lika. In the first few months, he didn't have any plans for her, he was just getting to know her better. But soon, he began to pay more attention to her. Lika stayed over at his place more often, and one morning, Dmitry started a conversation. "Lika, I told you about my mom. This weekend, I want to take you to meet her." "This weekend?" Lika hesitated. "Yes. I'll pick you up at 9 in the morning on Saturday, be ready," he winked at her. She felt nervous but also happy. It was a big step. If he's introducing her to his mother, it meant he had serious intentions. From the early morning, Lika prepared carefully for the meeting. The day before, she had bought fruit and a small cake as a gift. "Lika, enough already," Anya teased. "Everything will be fine, stop worrying." "I can't, Anya, my legs feel like they're giving way," Lika sighed. "You look great, you're a good person, there's nothing to worry about. And even if his mom turns out to be harsh, you're not going to live with her," Anya tried to comfort her. What if her opinion is really important to him? Lika wondered. If he's introducing you to her, then he's already thinking about a future with you. "Relax, everything will be fine," Anya reassured her. Dmitri arrived to pick Lika up right on time. During the ride, they talked about light topics, but Lika still felt nervous. "Don't worry so much, she won't eat you," Dmitri tried to calm her down. Lika smiled nervously and nodded. A couple of hours later, they arrived at Dmitri's mother's house. As Lika stepped out of the car, she looked around and was suddenly hit by a wave of nostalgia. She remembered her own life in the village, her childhood, her youth. But soon, the memories turned darker, recalling the death of her mother and the loss of her father. Lika shook her head, trying to shake off the sad thoughts. Just then, from the gate came Nadezhda Semenovna, a short, slender woman with dark, almost gray hair. Her skin was tanned, probably from spending so much time outdoors. Her face was lined with wrinkles, reflecting the hardships she had faced in life. The tightness of her lips gave her a stern look. "Well, hello, dear guests," she said, carefully studying her son and his girlfriend. Lika felt a bit embarrassed under her scrutinizing gaze, but quickly regained her composure. Smiling, she handed over the gift and said, "Hello, Nadezhda Semenovna. It's a pleasure to meet you. This is for you." The woman accepted the gift and invited the young people inside. Nadezhda had prepared well for the visit, the table was set and the treats were just right. They all sat down and the conversation began. "I also grew up in a village," Lika shared. "I lost my mother quite early and my father died when I was at university. Since then, I have been living in the city, and I have no one left in my hometown. I work, and my friend and I rent an apartment." At first, it wasn't very comfortable for Anzhelika to talk about herself under the careful gaze of Nadezhda Semyonovna, who listened attentively, pursing her thin lips. But after an hour, Lika relaxed. Despite her strict exterior, Nadezhda Semyonovna turned out to be a warm-hearted hostess and a compassionate person. She didn't ask Lika uncomfortable questions, but supported her when it was difficult to talk about her life. After lunch, everyone went out to the garden, and Nadezhda Semyonovna proudly showed her modest property. "I used to plant more and I had goats. Now it's harder, with age I get tired," explained the woman. "Oh no, you have such a great farm, you're amazing," Lika genuinely admired. "Well, stop praising me. I don't even go to the city anymore. But here in the village I have clients for eggs. You know, I love my hens. They're so good, they lay such delicious eggs," continued the woman, and Lika helped her water the garden. Dima decided to fix the roof, but within half an hour of working, he was called by a friend. He left his work and went outside to chat with him. Lika noticed Nadezhda's sigh when she saw her son stop working, but the women didn't discuss it. By the evening, everyone felt more relaxed, joked, and laughed. Suddenly, Dmitri cleared his throat and stood up. "My dear ladies, may I have your attention for a moment? I am very happy that we are all gathered here today. It pleases me that you have found common ground and become friends," Dmitri said, smiling at Anzhelika. "But I gathered you not just for a casual meeting. I'm sorry, my dear, that there's no one to ask for your hand. So in the presence of your mother, I ask you, Lika, to become my wife." Lika froze, covering her mouth with her hands, and tears filled her eyes. Nadezhda Semyonovna smiled and nodded, also unable to hold back her tears. "I agree," Anzhelika said, and Nadezhda Semyonovna blessed them for a happy marriage. The young couple didn't prepare for a lavish wedding, as they decided to just get registered and have a quiet meal together at a café. Anya gave them a beautiful set of bed linens as a wedding gift. Lika moved in with Dima, and they decided to live together, renting an apartment. Lika enjoyed living with Dima, taking care of him, and making breakfast in the mornings. Twice a month, they visited Nadezhda Semyonovna. The woman blossomed, and her relationship with Lika became friendly. Before the marriage, Dima visited his mother less often, But now he did so much more, and Nadezhda came to the conclusion that it was Lika who encouraged him to do so. This was indeed the case. Lika knew how bitter it was to live without parents and constantly reminded her husband to visit his mother whenever possible. Meanwhile, at work, changes occurred. Vyacheslav Semyonovich decided to conquer Moscow. He left, appointing his department head, Georgy Konstantinovich, and replaced him with his daughter, Kristina Vyacheslavovna. Kristina immediately held a meeting to introduce herself to the employees. Before leaving, her father gave her some instructions. Kristina turned out to be a beautiful, confident woman with a strong character. She made it clear that she would not tolerate sloppiness and would closely monitor everyone's work. She promised not to hesitate to fire anyone who didn't meet her standards. Dmitry was drawn to Kristina's authoritative manner. There was something captivating about her strong personality, and he decided not to miss his chance. He threw himself into work with even more energy, often stopping by her office to show his best side. Kristina noticed his efforts and, after a month, made him the head of the department. Dmitry was happy, but it seemed like it wasn't enough for him. Meanwhile, Lika continued to work and stay friends with Anya. She was proud of her husband and his new position. One weekend, the young couple was preparing to visit Nadezhda Semyonovna again. Lika said, "I'll go, but you won't be able to stay. The boss called me urgently. I need to help." The man shrugged. "Well, it's just the way it is." They had to go, and they headed to the village. On the way, Anzhelika suddenly felt nauseous. Dmitry, getting a bit nervous, stopped the car. "What's wrong with you? This is the second time we're stopping." There was no turning back, but Lika couldn't bear it anymore. "I don't know," she quietly replied. "It never happened before." Somehow, they made it to the village. Dmitry was in a hurry to get back to the city, so he didn't even get out of the car, just waved from the window and drove back. Nadezhda Semyonovna greeted Lika with concern. "Daughter, you look pale. What's wrong?" "I think I got carsick," Lika replied with a faint smile. "Let's go inside," Nadezhda said, helping her walk. But Lika wanted to stay on the porch. Nadezhda brought 2 cups of tea and started a conversation. She first asked where her son was in such a hurry, and then asked Lika, "Didn't you feel sick in the mornings before?" Lika looked at her in surprise, and Nadezhda added with a smile, "Well, what did you expect? You're living together." Lika looked puzzled, and Nadezhda suggested, "Let me go to the pharmacy and buy a test." The test showed 2 lines. Lika handed it to her mother-in-law with trembling hands. Nadezhda hugged her daughter-in-law joyfully, exclaiming, "Daughter, I'm so happy." From that day on, Nadezhda surrounded Lika with extraordinary love and care, literally not letting her do anything. Meanwhile, Dmitry was still not satisfied with his promotion. He wanted more attention from Kristina. She understood the hint and accepted his advances. Soon they went to a restaurant together, and afterward, Kristina invited him to her place. Dmitry was very proud of himself. He had managed to win over such a woman. And in bed, Kristina was nothing like Anzhelika. Confident, playful, she did things Dmitry could never have imagined with his wife. The next day, they spent more time together, and Dmitry didn't want to leave. He didn't want anyone to find out about their relationship. On Sunday, he returned to pick up Lika, and the women shared the joyful news with him. Dmitry was stunned. He hadn't expected this turn of events. He had already started thinking about divorce, hoping to marry Kristina. But now, after hearing this news, he realized everything had changed. "Pregnant?" he asked, not believing his ears. Nadezhda exchanged a glance with him and confirmed, "Yes, exactly." Dmitry was in shock and said, "Well, you've certainly surprised me." Lika calmly responded, "Yes, we'll go to the city. I'll register." When they returned home, life quickly returned to its usual pace. Lika went to the doctor, but with each passing day, she felt worse. In the mornings, she felt extremely nauseous and couldn't eat anything. Even walking past cafes made her feel sick. On top of that, Lika lost a lot of weight, her face became gaunt, and she seemed swollen. Dmitry didn't like these changes. and he wanted to see his wife as cheerful and active again. "Why are you lying around again?" he grumbled. "Pregnancy isn't an illness, Dima. But everyone's pregnancy is different," Lika explained. "I've made dinner, but you can eat alone. I can't. The smell makes me sick," Dmitri muttered. Again, alone. He couldn't understand that Lika wasn't faking, and he was genuinely upset. Meanwhile, he missed the affection of a woman, but he received plenty of it from Christina. Dmitri lied that he was staying late at work and spending his weekends there as well. Christina watched him and smiled, amused by the game. She never wanted to get married. She enjoyed the feeling of freedom, and with the money and position of her father and later her own, she also enjoyed the sense of power. Dmitri was never her goal. She simply enjoyed spending time with him, nothing more, and it was quite amusing to watch him lie and twist his words just to please her. When it was time for labor, Lika had been feeling nervous since the morning. She couldn't sit or lie still all day. Soon, the contractions started and Lika realized the intervals between them were getting shorter. She asked her husband to take her to the hospital. It was already evening and Dmitri didn't want to leave the house, but he had to take his wife to the maternity ward. Lika was registered and taken to a doctor. Meanwhile, Dmitri called Christina and she invited him over again. Lika's labor was difficult and she gave birth to the baby girl the next day. As soon as she saw her little one, all the pain, fear, and anxiety disappeared. "My baby," Lika whispered, "you're so beautiful. I love you so much." After calming down a bit, she couldn't immediately answer the phone. So, Anzhelika called her mother-in-law. "My dear daughter," Nadia said tearfully. "Congratulations. Thank you for the granddaughter. May she grow up healthy and, most importantly, happy." Lika had a heartfelt conversation with her mother-in-law and she felt a sense of relief. A couple of hours later, Dmitri called, genuinely happy to be a father. He asked when they would be discharged and, that same day, threw a little celebration at work where his colleagues congratulated him on becoming a father, wishing health to the mother and child. Dmitri only joked around in response. When Christina said, "Congratulations, Dmitri, such an important event," he smiled and nodded. After spending some time with his colleagues, Christina left and Dmitri received a message, "I'm waiting for you in an hour. We'll celebrate." After sitting for a bit longer, Dmitri left, pretending it was to prepare for the meeting with his wife and child. Instead, he went to Christina. They spent the night together again. Dmitri didn't feel guilty. They hadn't had intimacy with his wife for a long time, and even after childbirth, it wouldn't happen soon. He believed, as a man, he had the right to this. 3 days later, Dmitri seemed a little sad as he was returning home. He had been rushing in the morning and didn't manage to prepare much. He even forgot to buy flowers for his wife. Lika was a bit disappointed as other women had been greeted more ceremoniously with balloons, flowers, and a commemorative photo. But Lika didn't dwell on it. She was eager to get home, take a shower, and rest. On his day off, Dmitri took his wife and daughter home. Lika immediately went to the shower and Dmitri watched her, feeling something stir inside him. She was no longer the same as before. She had gained a few extra pounds, looked disheveled and unkempt. While she had been pregnant, Anzhelika bought loose clothes for herself, which she still wore. Meanwhile, Christina was always stylishly dressed, with manicured nails and makeup. Dmitri sighed deeply and went to the kitchen. Suddenly, the voice of little Lira broke the silence. Dmitri flinched and realized that he didn't know how to handle children. As Lika came out of the shower, she immediately took the baby in her arms, rocked her gently, and breastfed her. Lira calmed down. Dmitri had a hard time getting through the first day at home with his wife and newborn child. The next day, he decided not to stay at home. First, he went to the store where Lika had written him a long shopping list. Meanwhile, she was cooking, following the diet recommended by the doctors for new mothers. Dmitri was surprised when he found out that for dinner there was buckwheat with chicken breast. "Lika, what is this?" he asked. "Buckwheat," she replied. "When will there be normal food?" he wondered. Lika, despite her fatigue, answered, "When you were in the hospital, I cooked myself, but now we have this." Dmitri, unable to hide his displeasure, asked, "What's wrong with buckwheat?" Lika hurried to take care of their daughter, and at that moment Dmitri understood what his colleagues meant when they wished him patience. He wasn't ready, not just for sleepless nights, but also to endure all of this during the day. He went to a café, then took a walk around the city, and returned home only after several hours. The man immediately retreated to the living room where he tried to work and rest. Lika, on the other hand, had trouble sleeping at night, and during the day, Lira wouldn't let her go for even a minute, so she couldn't cook or clean. Time became a blur for her. When Dmitri came home from work, he was increasingly dissatisfied. You sit at home, nothing is cleaned, nothing is cooked, and you still complain, he complained. Despite Lika's requests, he stayed at work more and more often. He became used to eating in the cafeteria or a café, and his displeasure grew. He began to be irritated with Lika, reproaching her for not taking care of herself and turning into an attachment to a mop. She, receiving maternity benefits, couldn't manage the money and it was quickly spent. Dmitri, on the other hand, met with Christina more and more often. These meetings became rarer but still gave him some relief. 6 months later, Lira was growing, nights became quieter, and Dmitri started to change. They occasionally went for walks or visited the village, but Dmitri always found excuses not to go. Dmitri's mother, Nadezhda Semenovna, noticed that something was wrong in the family. She invited her daughter-in-law for a conversation, but Lika didn't open up. This all made her uneasy, though she couldn't quite pinpoint what was happening. 2 months later, Dmitri came home from work in a good mood. He was cheerful and even humming something to himself. "Dima, you're so cheerful, what happened?" Lika asked. He replied that his company had decided to reward him with a trip to the sea and even gave him an extra vacation. "How great!" Lika was surprised but immediately suggested, "Let's go together." Dmitri was puzzled. How together? Lika explained that the sea air would be good for Lira and they could all relax. However, Dmitri replied that the trip was paid for only for him and he couldn't take additional time off for the whole family. Lika suggested using their savings, but Dmitri refused. He reminded her that half of the money had gone to repair the car and he still needed to help his mother. He also emphasized that he couldn't ask for extra tickets as that might affect his career. Lika felt hurt but couldn't do anything about it. Although Dmitri had been spending more time with the family, Lika still suspected him of cheating but couldn't find any proof. She couldn't leave. Where could she go with a baby in her arms? The young woman had nowhere to go, and being on maternity leave, she was barely making ends meet. Renting a separate place was even more impossible. So, clenching her teeth, she endured. This episode now hurt her deeply, as she would have gladly helped her mother-in-law, but the suspicion that her husband wasn't going alone gnawed at her from within with double the strength. Dima, excited about the upcoming trip, packed his things. Christina had indeed invited him to go to the sea, and she even paid for everything. The woman wanted to bring some passion back into their relationship as she had grown tired of the routine. Or maybe it was Dima himself who had begun to bore her. She decided to sort out her feelings. And where, if not at the sea, could she understand everything in just 2 days? 2 days before the trip, Dima took Lika to his mother's village. Nadia Semyonovna was very happy. This year, she had planted potatoes in nearly the entire garden, and now it was time to dig them up. She greeted her dear guests with joy. "Mom, we're not staying long. I brought Lika with the granddaughter," Dima said. "I have to leave urgently. I have a lot of work, at least 3 weeks. "Sorry, I have to go," he added, and Nadia looked at her daughter-in-law, confused. From her gaze, the woman understood everything but only asked dryly and emotionlessly, "Son, you're not even staying for lunch?" Dima, not noticing his mother's change in tone, answered cheerfully, "Well, I'll have lunch and leave." He quickly ate and hurried to leave the village, pleased that he had finally escaped from the monotonous daily routine to the real sea of romance and passion. His suitcase was packed and Dima ordered a taxi for himself and Christina. They headed to the airport and Christina became more and more introspective. Did she need to continue her relationship with this man, or was it time to move on? Christina lived by her own rules, never staying with the same man for long. She found herself in this. She promised no one anything and had no desire to get married or start a family. She simply didn't need it. But in business, she was a true shark, a worthy successor to her father. As for her personal life, her father, Vlad Semyonovich, preferred not to interfere. While Dmitri was flying with his lover to the sea, Nadia Semyonovna decided to have an honest conversation with her daughter-in-law. "I've suspected him for a long time," she started. "During your pregnancy, he was only at home at night. And we didn't even have a bed back then. Pregnancy was hard. After the birth, I didn't have time for anything. I don't know if it's the same woman or if he's got a new one," she said sadly. "Oh, Dima," sighed the mother-in-law. "No matter how hard I tried, his genes from his father still came through. He also cheated on me, and then he said that he wasn't ready to be a father. He tried it, didn't like it, thought he had the right to live a carefree life, and just left. He simply walked away and then stopped paying. And I, dear, you know how hard I tried to raise Dima, to teach him that family is the most important thing. Before he left for the city, he helped and cared. But then when he found freedom, everything just fell apart. Remember, he promised to fix the roof? Now, I don't have the strength like I did when I was younger, and he just keeps making promises. And I've long noticed that his gaze has become distant. He's hiding something. You know, my dear, as a mother, I shouldn't say this, but he won't be a good father or husband. If he's cheating, then he's not the right man for you. It's not good for Lira to see a father like that. You should divorce him. Lika looked at her mother-in-law in shock. Nadia Semenovna wasn't hiding it, but she would have left if she could. There was nowhere to go. Surviving on benefits is hard, and finding work is not that easy. She could take a part-time job, but there's no place to live, and renting an apartment is too expensive. You think I don't know anything? Yes, I saw everything, and I remember how he mistreated me, throwing accusations at me. But I stepped on my pride and endured. When Lira grows up and goes to kindergarten, I'll go back to work and leave. Let him do whatever he wants. Lika couldn't hold back her tears. Don't cry, dear. It's not worth living like I did, but here the air is fresh. We have a garden and a playground for Lira. She'll be fine here. If you want, work from home. I'll watch over your daughter. Don't hold on to your pride, my dear. He doesn't deserve it. Lika hugged Nadia Semenovna and tears ran down her face. The two women, having found each other, shared this moment, and despite their pain, they were together. Meanwhile, Dmitry continued to enjoy his life and spent the night with his mistress, not thinking about anything. Lika was considering her mother-in-law's offer, and Nadia Semenovna bitterly realized that she hadn't been able to raise a worthy son. The next morning, Lika nervously told her mother-in-law that she agreed. Of course, my dear, you'll stay with us. What else is there to say? My son still needs to be taught a lesson. Yes, he's grown up, answered Nadia Semenovna. Lika smiled, and the whole family sat down for breakfast. After breakfast, the women got to work. They needed to dig up the potatoes and tidy up the garden. The autumn days were still warm and sunny, and Lira played nearby. On the very first working day, Lika went to the city and filed for divorce. She then packed up Lira's things and moved them to her mother-in-law's house. Dmitry, as usual, didn't suspect anything. Lika didn't waste any time. She called Anya, who had also recently married and was expecting a child. Anya was having a hard time at work and asked to be transferred to part-time. Lika, meanwhile, started working remotely. Though at first she was nervous, working from home turned out to be a real relief, and she felt like she had wings again. During this time, Nadia Semenovna helped with Lira and took care of the household. Dmitry continued to call less often and had no idea what was going on. It was easier for him when his wife quickly ended the conversation because he didn't have to come up with excuses and lie about his lonely vacation. Meanwhile, the divorce proceedings were moving forward. Lika told the court everything that had been happening in their lives, emphasizing that she was no longer willing to tolerate her husband's infidelities and reckless behavior, as it was also harmful for their child. Several times, the judge tried to reach Dmitry, but fortunately, he didn't answer. In total, Dmitry spent a whole month away, and during this time, Anzhelika's life changed. She gained confidence in herself, visited a beauty salon, changed her hairstyle, and did a trendy hair coloring. She updated her wardrobe, even though she lived in the village. She wanted to feel more confident, and she began to feel a surge of inner strength. It seemed that living together was easy and comfortable for the two women. They divided household chores without saying a word, and their life settled into a familiar rhythm. A month passed, and Dmitry returned from his vacation, tanned and well-rested, literally radiating energy. Christina met him at the airport. He went home, had dinner at a café, took a shower, and went to bed, not even noticing that his wife and daughter's belongings were gone. The next morning, he slowly got ready, had breakfast at a café, and headed to the village to see Lika. On the way, he suddenly realized he missed his wife. Christina was completely different. Her energy drained him, and he realized how tired he had become during the past month. Now he just wanted to live peacefully with his family. When he arrived at his mother's house, his heart began to race. He felt a strange excitement. Lika and her mother, Nadezhda Semyonovna, heard someone had arrived and understood that the moment of truth had come. Dmitry smiled broadly and opened the gate. His mother and wife stood on the porch. "Well, hello, family. I missed you," Dmitry said, spreading his arms. "Finally, you came," Anzhelika said. "Well, son, what have you done?" "I don't understand you," his mother said. "What's going on? Is this a joke?" Dmitry asked, confused. "No," Lika calmly replied. "The jokes are over. We're divorced. You need to sign the papers." Dmitri was shocked. He noticed changes in Lika. She was completely different, not just in appearance. This stunned him. He was in shock over how things had turned out. What divorce? Lika, wake up. You have a child, where are you going? Or are you hoping for good alimony? Just know, I'm not going to support you, he said sharply. So think again and quickly apologize, and then you'll owe me an apology tonight. I'll decide whether to forgive you or not, replied Dima. Dima, you're pathetic and disgusting. Either way, the divorce is happening. Whether you want it or not, replied Anzhelika. Now you'd better leave. What's wrong with you, mother? Have you gone mad? You're following this crazy girl's lead? You can't even trust her with a child. She needs treatment. Dmitri continued, spitting venom. No, son, you're the one who's gone mad. You need treatment yourself. Now really go. You're not welcome here. With these words, Nadezhda Semenovna went back into the house. Dmitri stood there for a couple of minutes, processing the information. He hadn't expected such a response from his wife, who used to always look to him for guidance. Lika had suddenly grown a backbone. And his mother? Well, to hell with you. He growled, got into the car, slammed the door in anger, and drove away. That evening, he tried to calm himself with alcohol. But the more he drank, the more he deluded himself. He pictured Lika on her knees, begging for his forgiveness, while he, proud and majestic, thought about what to do. He fell asleep, but in the morning, he woke up feeling completely broken, with a headache and a dry mouth. All day he tried to pull himself together, and by the evening he decided to visit Christina. He thought if one had slipped away, he had to get the other, Mary Sadov's daughter, and the whole world would be at his feet. He was certain that if he proposed to Christina, she would melt because she was 8 years older than him, and he believed he was her last chance at happiness. He drove up to Christina's house and started calling her. Christina didn't answer right away. She saw Dmitri's number but had already decided that he had become tiresome, so she wasn't in a hurry to pick up. But he kept calling, and on the 5th try she finally answered. Darling, finally. Are you home? I'm standing downstairs. I really want to see you, Dima said playfully. But Christina interrupted him. I'm not home. I'm very busy. Bye. And hung up. Dmitri was stunned. He was sure she would welcome him with open arms. Not getting what he wanted, Dmitri went home. His hands instinctively reached for alcohol again, but he had to work tomorrow, so he restrained himself. The next morning, he went to the office, where a meeting was immediately called. This time, Christina wasn't acting like herself. She demanded reports that Dmitri couldn't provide, and data he didn't have because of his long absence. After the meeting, when they were alone, Christina closed the door and, glancing playfully at him, said, So, you decided to play the tough boss? You know, I like it. Dmitri was so stunned by her look that he lost his words. If in 2 hours you haven't done everything I asked for in the morning meeting, you'll have only yourself to blame, Christina said firmly. Dmitri, not understanding what was going on, asked in surprise, What dog bit you? Christina replied sharply, This is all from the past. If you, Dmitri Vladimirovich, don't work, you have no place here. Dmitri returned to his workplace, but, naturally, did not manage to complete everything he was asked to do, for which he received his first reprimand. He honestly didn't understand what was happening and didn't take it seriously. However, when Christina explained everything to him in detail that evening, without holding back any swear words, Dmitri finally understood what was going on. A few days later, he received a court summons, where he had to finalize his divorce. He was ordered to pay alimony, and, with no moral strength to object, he accepted it. At work, Dmitri faced a real storm. Tasks poured in from all directions, and he couldn't manage to complete them, earning fines and reprimands. He could no longer help his former mother-in-law with household chores, and little Lira, despite the autumn, spent almost the whole day outside in the village. Lika was quietly enjoying her new life. One day, Anzhelika went to the city to buy a fall outfit for Lira and a few things for the house. In a hurry, walking from the bus stop to the shopping center, Lika noticed a woman at the underground passage. She was a beggar in dirty clothes, asking for alms. Lika came closer and recognized Valentina. The woman raised her gaze, and with surprise said, "Well, look who hasn't disappeared." Lika took 1,000 rubles from her wallet and handed them to her. "Why are you here? You had a house, children. How did you end up like this?" Lika asked in surprise. Valentina smirked and explained that when Alyosha returned to the village, he started drinking, and the house became dilapidated and was given to another family. She couldn't find a job, and there was no point in living anymore. When Lika refused to go with her for a drink at the cafeteria, Valentina, showing no interest, walked away. Anzhelika quickly bought everything she needed and hurried back to the bus. But on the way back, she remembered Valentina again. However, she soon forgot about her and life went on. Lika worked and raised her daughter and winter passed. They all celebrated the new year, but Dmitri never came to see his mother. He called rarely, and the conversations lasted only a couple of minutes. He didn't show any interest in his daughter, and soon the alimony payments stopped. At work, Christina declared an all-out war on her former lover. One reprimand after another came, and a month before the new year he was fired for cause. Dmitri was angry but couldn't do anything. Finding a new job was impossible, and he lived off the remnants of his salary, not thinking about his daughter. Winter passed and spring arrived. Nature slowly awoke from its slumber. The first green grass appeared, and streams ran down the roads. Lika was walking with Lyra, telling her about the signs of spring when the stroller got stuck in a pothole. Lika tried to get it out, but nothing worked. She had already taken the girl out of the stroller and set her aside, but the wheel got stuck in the wet ground of the rut and wouldn't budge. Lika was on the verge of tears when suddenly, from behind, she heard a man's voice. "Can I help you?" Startled, Lika flinched. The man was standing on the road, smiling. "Let's see what we've got here," he said, stepping a little closer. He helped pull the stroller out, though the wheel now had a hefty chunk of mud stuck to it. "Oh, thank you," Lika said. "I was about to leave the stroller here and walk home." "Looks like fate brought us together," the man replied. "Do you live here?" "Yes," Lika answered. "I went for a walk. It's such warm sunshine. I didn't want to sit at home." "That's true," the man continued. "I bought a house here as a summer home. Nice place. Can I meet your husband?" Lika started, but then shrugged uncertainly, and they continued walking down the street toward home. They chatted a little and got to know each other. The man's name was Vasily. He was from the city but had bought a house in this village. He was a little older than Lika, divorced and had no children from the marriage. Lika shared a bit about herself as well. From that day on, Vasily started visiting on weekends to walk with Lika and Lyra. At first, Lika's mother, Nadezhda Semyonovna, had her doubts, but later told her former daughter-in-law that she shouldn't bury herself while still young. 6 months later, Vasily proposed to Lika. He got along not only with Lyra but also with Nadezhda Semyonovna, since she was Lyra's grandmother and an integral part of Lika's life. Lika accepted Vasily's proposal, and they got married. Lika and her daughter moved in with him. During this time, Dima had changed jobs twice, but none of them were to his liking. He was bitter about Lika and Christina, blaming women for ruining his life. He didn't even know that Lika had remarried and that another man was raising his daughter. Dima, scraping by with odd jobs, continued to live in the city. It was the end of summer when Vasily, Lika, and Lyra decided to go to the sea, and unexpectedly, they invited Nadezhda Semyonovna along. Vasily no longer had parents, so he gladly agreed to take her with them. "Oh, the sea! I've dreamed of it all my life but never been," said Nadezhda Semyonovna. "But I have the garden. We'll deal with the garden later," Lika said. "Come with us." Nadezhda hesitated for a couple of days but eventually agreed to the trip. Lika, Vasily, Lyra, and Nadezhda Semyonovna enjoyed the warm sea and sunshine, while Dima, now without a job and money, was digging potatoes in his mother's garden.